Welcome to the Modern Agile Show. I am here with my friend John P. Cutler, who called me this morning and said, "Want to cut a show? I'm in town." And I said, "Sure thing." Thanks for being here.
Yeah, I mean, I got kind of bored. I was at the airport, and then I was like,
That's what you want to do, folks. If you're bored at the airport,
bored at SFO.
Come to Berkeley. We'll make a Modern Agile Show.
A lot more exciting here than at the airport, for sure.
Awesome. Well, it's great to have you, John. You are a wonderful member of the Modern Agile community, an amazing product manager, a thought leader, and you're constantly putting incredible stuff out there, thoughts and questions and consolidating what people think and putting out wisdom that you've accumulated over your many years of being in software and being around products. So it's just fantastic to have you here.
Yeah, I'm excited. I remember the first time that I saw the Modern Agile principles, and I think I immediately found myself gravitating towards those things. And it keeps coming up in the writing, even like when I mention it or don't mention it, I keep coming back to these things. So I love the community. I like too that there's such a overlap of different folks in the community. So my audience on Twitter or other things or Medium there's a lot of product, a lot of UX folks. Yeah. And I wrote recently about Modern Agile, just a brief post, and I had so many people kind of get back to me from different communities, and that was that's nice to see, because often the learning for these particular silos happens in silos, right?
Yeah.
There's not a lot of kind of we talk about cross-functional teams, but we don't learn cross-functionally.
Right.
So
we hang in our different communities, and that's it. We hang with the same people.
Yep.
If you're in UX, you're with UX folks. If you're in product management, you're... Absolutely. Yeah. I think do you think you're a cross-cutting kind of person? Like you prefer to be not with one kind of area?
Yeah, I think so. I think I used to play music. I used to play in bands, and I think that there's one thing when you're with that creative group of people, and they're kind of weirdos, and everyone's doing their own thing, and they kind of have different. I mean, you're all musicians, right? I guess you could say that, but I guess I've always loved that idea of the merry band,
yes,
of creators, and so. It's funny because often, maybe I don't even quite fit in those groups, because when I'm with a group of, let's say, developers, I often find myself more aligned with the developers than I do necessarily like other product folks.
Yes.
Now, I think that's because I have this like intense interest and respect for the people just have their hands in it,
yes,
right, and do those things. And
yes.
So I think that there's, I often say too that there's nothing that annoys me more than a product person who sort of swoops and poops and just doesn't really add any...
Swoops and poops.
Well, that's what they do,
I
right?
know, yeah. And it's called Siegel Consulting.
Siegel. That's awesome. They just kind of come in there and they don't... Like the team wouldn't hire them if they controlled the budget.
Right.
They're just kind of like a coaxer and a pusher. Mm-hmm. And what I've found, at least, is that the developers that I most relate to and who are the most passionate about what they're doing, they have an intense desire to know that their work is creating impact.
Yes.
And what's one of the things that really inspired me, I think the Modern Agile stuff inspired me, because I remember I had a conversation with a developer, and they said they've been doing this for like 2 decades, like you or I or other people, and they said, you know what, I can always find interesting problems to solve, but I've given up on the whole valuable stuff and the experiment stuff. And it was such a sad moment. It was incredibly sad, because what they were saying is, you know what, I can always find an interesting problem, but I have this deep passion for experimentation and kind of doing the right thing. And they were... I just thought, made me so sad. It really resonated, the thing about psychological safety, and it made me so sad that someone had kind of just given up on that, and then they're just like, well, I'm always going to work at messed up companies. I'm always going to, it's always going to be dysfunctional, but I've got my thing. And I remember the principles, and then seeing that and thinking, I never want that to happen. Right. I never want anyone I'm working with to have that happen.
Yeah, it's we were talking a little bit about this earlier. whether is Modern Agile an individual practice? Is it something you take on individually, or is it something you take on as a team or an organization? You know, I'm influenced by Ashley Johnson, who basically said years ago that Agile is an individual sport.
Yeah.
That is, individuals travel through the Agile journey. I'm kind of going through the Satir change curve there. It's in my hand, but
it's just programmed into your hand. Right?
It is. But it's basically, you know, individuals travel through that curve differently.
Yeah.
The Virginia Satir change curve, if you don't know about that, just Google it. Satir is S-A-T-I-R. But yeah, and so you could have people in the organization that are up here on the curve, and then people that are way down there in the you know, depths of chaos. So Modern Agile, yeah, it's supposed to be generative.
Right.
The whole point is to say, hey, there's 4 principles. What do you want to do with them? What are you going to do with them? So, for example, I'd say you deliver value continuously, because you're constantly, you have a lot of good habits where you're saying, okay, I'm going to tell us
a lot of bad habits too.
Well, all right, but let's talk about your good habits.
The good.
You put stuff out every day.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's been a lot. I mean, there's almost 300 posts at the moment.
How do you do that? Are you driven by a principle like deliver value? Are you driven by deliver value continuously? Do you think in the morning, I got to deliver something of value?
I do. You know, it's funny because it's, I think it's experiment and learn and then deliver the value. I mean, honestly, a lot of the time, the learning is the big part. A lot of the posts are kind of ruminating and they're going around. And I think that I'm working out my own thinking, it's nice that people definitely encourage me, and then they come back and I'll get a message, and that really, really makes my day. Whenever I hear that, that's amazing. But a lot of the stuff is just learning, kind of building, helping my mental models emerge and do those types of things. And I happen to do it with writing.
Yeah.
But I do take it to the extreme. I mean, some tips that I use is I have there's an app called Temi, which does like transcriptions automatically. They're kind of crappy transcriptions.
Also, you just talk to it, and
but you know, where I live in Santa Barbara, we have a nice place to go for a walk, and it's the sun. And I've realized that the worst place for me to think is sort of huddled up at a desk trying to type these things. So I'll just take Temi and have Temi like, hey Temi, I love you, Temi, but like I'll just talk to Temi.
Right. So Temi makes you awesome.
Yeah, that app is great. And you know what's great about Temi is Temi doesn't take as long as the chat was to transcribe it.
How do you spell Temi?
T-E-M-I.
T-E-M-I. Okay.
So the funny thing there is that you'll talk for 60 minutes, and because it farms it out to the cloud and it just does what it does, it sends it back to you in like a minute. Oh. So that's awesome. There's another app called Flow State. Again, these things. So this actually is funny. Maybe it's probably a good topic too. But Flow State imposes constraints.
Yes.
So the way that the Flow State app works is you start typing, and you have to type for a specified amount of time. Otherwise, it disappears. So the idea that this stuff takes practice too. I remember with Flow State, I couldn't get through a minute. You know, notifications are buzzing in our life and all kinds of things. Like to get to 3 minutes, and there's a lot of doubt. You're kind of editing yourself while you're writing. So I started with 3 minutes, and that was hard.
So does it turn off all the notifications?
Oh, it just blanks out the screen. Like it's very difficult to do anything. Of course, your phone is there, and if I'm using my iPad, it's another thing. But then you practice. It's just about practice, and then it goes from 3 minutes to 5 to 15.
Oh, it does that for you.
So you set the timer as you get better at it, right? But then it's got to the point where it's like 60 minutes.
Yeah.
So in 60 minutes, you can generate thousands of words.
Yeah.
Now, they're not all great, but they come from the heart.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing. Yeah. But it's funny, my mom will call, and so Flow State is working there, and if I stop, all my writing will go away. So I will sit and be like, I'll be pressing A. I'll be pressing A and do the... Yeah, but that's a great example of making people awesome, but it's also, I think, a good example of something that's been fascinating me lately, maybe you have thoughts on, there's these forcing functions and constraints we use in a lot of like agile patterns and a lot of things that taken with psychological safety are so effective.
Yeah.
Taken without psychological safety, the exact same forcing function. And it's got to the point too, I argue with people about sprints or not sprints, but then I realized, it clicked in my mind, we hire these forcing functions and constraints to help us do positive things.
Sure.
The minute any of them can be abused.
Right. Right.
So that's the thing. So flow state is my forcing function, and it does something that happens to be awesome for me. Mm-hmm. But let's say I had a kid, and I wanted that kid to learn to be a writer, and every day I said, got to do the flow state. Their head would explode.
Their head would explode. Yeah, no question. It's what's working, what works.
Yep.
And so, I mean, for you, I think you've found some tools and ways to be a continuous learner.
Yeah.
And do that through writing, so delivering value continuously and experimenting and learning rapidly is what you're saying. What about the make people awesome and make safety a prerequisite? So how does that, that's the north and south poles of modern agile.
Well, it's funny, I'm thinking about it from the product managers, and man, if I could just get the word manager out. It's the only person called a manager who doesn't manage by traditional definitions of management. So one thing I love being just product advocate, and back to that, actually making people awesome. Mm-hmm. If I was structuring organizations, or when I tell people to, I would rather that the PM be aligned to an actor and their goal, like be the support evangelist.
Right.
If you're building a customer support product, or be the, accounting efficiency lover. So I think that's a funny,
and that's making the user awesome.
That's making the user
advocate for the user.
Exactly. And I think that one thing you notice a lot with, especially in the really complex environments that I've been working in lately, that we use the word product so flippantly, and we use the word customer so flippantly. If you and I are working together, I want you to be my partner. Even if I'm making an internal tool for you, I want us to both remember that there's a customer out there. So I think that the word customer or user is sacred.
Yes.
For those things. And I think that this, and the funny thing, there's a progression here. A lot of people who have not even embraced any product or UX ideas come from a very steady project culture. Mm-hmm. So just having a product person there is great.
Yeah.
Great. We have a product person. We're just doing any UX. Like, we're not going to send out the alert to all of Hawaii. Right. We're not going to do those things. But it's a progression. Like, that's just the start.
Yeah.
Once you get through that, then a lot of companies I'm dealing with are saying things like, how do we think about what we're doing across 60 teams? Or, how do we keep remembering that the customer is important? So you can imagine some of these products have 20 touch points, and the actors are moving all across them. So it's kind of funny, like, it starts with no product thinking. Then it gets to some product thinking. That's what people call me about sometimes lately. We need product thinking. And then I kind of say, well, we could start there, but the evolution is almost like service thinking.
Yes,
it's almost
customer thinking.
Yeah, it's customer level thinking to do it. So I think that, hopefully that answers your question.
Well, that's what Make People Awesome is about.
The make people awesome. And then the safety part, it's, again, safety, I think it might have been Arlo Belshi or someone who said, like, scaling is fundamentally the question of what has to stay consistent, what must stay consistent, and what you spend and lose and sacrifice to keep it consistent.
Yes.
And so I think about, as a product person, that's what I think about with safety. There's many ways to get highly conformant systems with people, and you can hire a bunch of project managers, you can do a lot of things, but you can suck all the energy, all the happenstance, all the brilliant mistakes out of the room to do it. Yeah. So that's when I think about safety. I think safety becomes when you have that kind of, and now sometimes some safety does require that level of kind of, we need that to be consistent. We need our customers to be safe whenever they're doing that.
Right.
And then the question comes, like, how much do you lose as a company to achieve that one level? Can you come up with a brilliant hack?
Yeah.
And experiment or learn? Can you experiment or learn to achieve that level of consistency and safety without screwing over other customers or screwing over people in your company? So I don't know. It's a fascinating balance, I think.
It really is. I think if you're making people awesome, you care about them.
Yeah.
Whether they're your employees or staff in your organization or the actual user.
Yeah.
Once someone feels cared about,
yeah,
truly cared about, not BS, but real care.
Yeah.
all of a sudden, then they may be open to some of the safety things you want to do.
Yeah.
And I think we take for granted, we make a product,
Yeah.
and then we take for granted that the core of the product works.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I've used a product or a service where the fundamental thing it's supposed to be able to do,
Yeah.
it's lousy at. And meanwhile, the companies, they're long past doing the fundamental thing. They're off to doing all kinds
They're
of
very
bells.
up and to the right.
Yeah.
They're up and to the right.
They're up and doing bells and whistles. And I'm like, I'm trying to use your calendar scheduling app to like let people schedule meetings with me. I've gone in there, I've told it what days I'm available. I've done everything I can. Now I need to give them a URL to give out to say, start using this little product.
Yeah.
I can't find the URL. So I did all this work to basically set up a calendar system.
Yeah.
And I can't find the URL.
Yeah.
Finally, the second or third day that I got into that system, I finally found it by chance. This is the fundamental thing.
Testing is actually, because I did a fair amount of UX research before, and what I've noticed back to the psychological safety side is, this is what I say this to companies. So like, I'll ask a group of product people, like, okay, what were the last 10 decisions you made? Which ones worked out? Which ones could you learn from it and fail?
Wonderful question.
And what I learned the hard way is that you need so much safety in the room to actually ask that question.
Yeah.
And then
Right,
what I
they'll
started...
be like, oh, you just put my back up against the wall. I'm going to say whatever's going to protect me is what I'm going to say, not the truth.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And so what's interesting too is that even measurement, I'm a big sort of data person for these things, even measurement is an iterative thing.
And measurement can scare people too.
And measurement can be a trust proxy, and measurement can be a safety proxy, and it can be a lot of things that aren't helpful. Yeah. So, a lot of times you'll measure something, and the first time around you'll be like, crap. Yeah. We really measured something the wrong way. Mm-hmm. We tried something very minimal, and it was a lot more complex than we thought. Mm-hmm. And if you're worried in your company about, oh, that's it, team's terrible, or anything like that. So but with UX research, a lot of times just usability testing your product can require safety. It requires safety for the customer. You actually have to let them know that there's no bad, you're never wrong. Just because you couldn't find it means you're wrong. And it means you also have to get the developers and UX folk in the room and just sort of say, we might have been totally off base. Yeah. So back to that question, when you've nailed it is when you get a group of PMs together and they're like, well, you know what? 6 out of the 10 decisions we made, not great, but we pivoted out early.
Yeah, which is a fantastic outcome.
That's fine. 3 of them were pretty good, and 1 of them completely changed our business. Yeah. Which is, to do those things. And that's where I think that, to me, that wraps up all the things. You have to experiment and learn. Yeah. You have to try to deliver value continuously, and then you have to make everyone awesome, like the customers and everyone awesome, and then you need to make it safe to make it okay to fail. Because it's funny when people brag to me about, well, we have 95% project success rate. Well, usually all I actually take away from that is you must be in a business. You're either in a business where everything is so predictable that the only, you're chasing after tiny percentage points of gain every year, or you've taken all the novelty and sort of crazy mistakes out of the thing. You don't want that, maybe.
And you might be right for disruption too.
Right, exactly.
So you're polishing something that just simple polishing, but that's a little scary too. I think the thing I'm starting to come to is that like where do you begin with the modern agile principles? Where do you start? And I think what you're saying is you start a lot of times with experiment and learn rapidly, which I think makes a lot of sense. In some ways, I think I'm moving more towards starting with make people awesome, which is to say, I've got to establish the relationship with the people with whom I work, with my customers, with my stakeholders. I've got to establish a relationship with a set of trust, spend time with them so they understand where I'm coming from. I'm not trying to make safety a prerequisite on them to scare them. I am trying to make them awesome, make us all awesome. And they have to deeply understand that and know that I'm not out to get them. And then I can bring in safety and experimenting and all this other stuff.
That's fascinating. And then what that makes me think of too is that sometimes you haven't really grokked what safety means. Right. So and actually this is a great point. So I'm of the type, right, who's just into the kind of radical candor, radical transparency, flatten out the organization. Is that our time box? Is it done? Can we keep talking?
I don't know what that means. So we will try to keep talking. And
we're going to experiment and learn right now. We're gonna
it might have started, I don't know what the hell it's doing.
Or was that the timer?
Oh, that could have been the timer. All right. Well, never mind.
We were talking about where to start.
Where to start.
And so what I was noticing is a big personal realization is I'm of this kind of radical candor, transparency, flatten out the org, get everyone in the room, you know, call the kettle black kind of person.
Yep.
But a big learning of mine has been that's not everyone's version of initial safety.
Right.
You know, that's not right. That's my version. And that's something that has been meaningful for me in the modern agile principles is that it's very meta. We're experimenting and learning on our own version of what these principles mean.
Yes, we are.
And so I actually like that that it's an interesting thought, because before, maybe if you'd asked me like a couple of months ago, I would have said, well, establish that safety as a prerequisite. Now, what you notice when a lot of people say safety is a prerequisite, that's actually them saying, like, I want to continue this thing. I want to do this thing that it feels really good to me, but everyone has been pushing back on furiously. Mm-hmm. And you see that a lot even in the modern Agile Slack. And I've been that guy. I've been the person posting like, well, why don't they understand? Like, I totally mean well.
Yeah.
And I think that's a personal journey that you take to understand. And that's what I actually like maybe it's sort of experimenting, learning about the person. What do you think is awesome? I might assume that you, Josh, think that all this stuff is awesome, but that's just me just grafting it on you.
That's right. We don't know what each other's thinking, and we try to roll out these improvement initiatives.
Yeah.
And we have broken relationships.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Or just they're afraid. They have issues.
Yeah.
And you almost have to get through that. Like we were going to roll out some chartering here internally at Industrial Logic, and a really smart consultant that is helping us named Vanessa Shaw came in and said, why don't you start with appreciations? You know, let's do some appreciations first before we roll out chartering. And it was like, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
And that I think goes to that make people awesome is let's appreciate each other, let's help each other, you know, understand our intentions and all that stuff so that it paves the way for these principles to really take a hold.
Yeah, that's interesting. Just connecting on that level with people.
Yeah, and I have a question here from our Modern Agile community. So Don...
There is a community, so you can join the Slack channel. So
you can join the Slack, our Modern Agile Slack. Please do.
Slack thing.
We have it on we have a Facebook crew too, but there's a lot more activity on Slack. So Don asks you specifically, what is your biggest frustration when working with a new organization?
Oh, wow. That's evolved definitely over the years. Actually, back to what we were just talking about, in the sense that, man, I have to say I'm no ninja with this stuff. I come in with a lot of energy, full force.
Oh, I can't believe that.
You know?
I can't believe that at all.
My biggest frustration. What's interesting to me is I think that my biggest frustration is I am such a diehard systems thinker to the opposite. And I had a great conversation with Ben Thompson. He's the co-founder of Get Prime, which is like a startup. They're based in Durango. And we were talking about different mindsets. You know, that there's diehard systems thinkers.
Yeah.
Now, if something's out of place for me, if the system is off, I'm paralyzed.
Right.
I will keep on digging down to the biggest root cause. So my problem in organizations is, in a week, I figured out what the problem is, right? At least my perception of the problem. And so I can't get it out of my head, right? So it's
when they want you to work on the superficial stuff, you're like, but there's this thing here.
And I think what's special about that, back to the make people awesome thing, and I think that, you know, the future of work is that we don't have these monocultures. We have diversity. People have learned to have the crucial conversations and in a respectful, not enforcing like, I'm going to have, you know, radical candor to me, you know, radical, you know, I worked for a company where one of the things was brutal honesty. And like, I don't know.
Well,
but like,
she's good. Kim Scott in her book Radical Candor is very good.
It's
about
very good.
making the distinction between
Yeah.
like good radical candor. And
I like the word radical. See, I can hang with radical. Like brutal is a little tough, but
brutal stuff.
So I think for that would be the question for. I'm answering just me personally.
Yeah,
is that you take in, and that's actually an interesting learning for me. I think that when approaching a new organization, you know, let's just say you come in with an onboarding group into your company, is pairing with people.
Yeah.
You know, like can you experience this system with another group of people? Because when you come into a new org, you're there, you haven't made connections yet. You're in your own, you're not reality checking your experience. Right. So back to the Make People Awesome Connect, one of the biggest things is there's such a pressure to get busy right away. Yeah. And I think that like that's a great takeaway for companies is leave a month for that person to have 100 one-on-ones and have coffee.
Get to know people.
Get to know people, what motivates them. Bring that onboarded group of people and don't just throw them into this one little space. Like get them to like deeply understand what's happening in the
That's
company.
what a system thinker would say, because a system thinker is going to look at the big system and go like, how could we really make an impact versus superficial things?
Yeah, and actually to that point, the diversity. Maybe some people just like to get to work right away. They learn by just cranking it out.
Which is fine. Those people are fine.
Totally.
We need the John P. Cutlers coming in and also doing the systems thinking. So
I mean, remember, the canary in the coal mine does die, right? Like, there's no badge for being a canary in the coal mine.
That's
is
so
that
true. Yes.
You don't get your scout badge.
Anyway, it's been a pleasure chatting with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm sure we'll have to have you back again. There's so much more to talk about.
Yeah.
So thanks for being here.
Absolutely. I had a great time. And I love the community and watching it grow too. So
well, we love having you part of the community. So thanks for being
my pleasure.
A part. And we'll see you next time. Please share the show with others and like us on where YouTube and everywhere else.
The places where people go.
That's right. And
the town squares of the future.
And we'll see you for the next episode. Thanks a lot.
Great. Thank you.